That's something that I also always incorporate, whether I'm running a team, in corporate America or was running a team in corporate America, or on an engagement, is making sure that you're really focused on that, and even having best practice sharing sessions each week where we would go around the horn and say, okay, either talk about a success you had this week, or talk about a issue you're having, kind of a hurdle you're having, or a bottleneck in moving forward in an account or getting into an account. And then, with the group kind of brain power, they're collaborating. They would learn from the success stories, but then also, people would be able to chime in, whether it's myself or other reps or all the above, and helping that individual with whatever hurdle it is that they're dealing with.
Your business's success depends on relationships with customers, relationships with employees, and relationships with stakeholders. What do they all have in common? They're all human, because no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Welcome to the Human Connection Podcast. I'm your host, Carl Ponto. Each week, I'll bring you stories, insights, and practical advice from experts that you can apply to your growing company and daily life. This week, I'm excited to connect with James Watson. He is a fractional VP of sales that utilizes a hands-on approach to sales building and management. He helped a small company scale from $600,000 to $1.2 million, a mid-sized company grow from $13 million to $30 million, and a larger company grow from $100 million to over $2 billion in sales. This trajectory is complemented by his personal journey, marked by resilience cultivated through sports, which informs his leadership style in overcoming sales challenges. With extensive experience at prominent firms such as Xerox and CoStar Group, and as the founder of his own consulting firm, he blends practical sales acumen with strategic foresight to help businesses develop scalable sales processes. Congrats on helping multiple companies of various sizes grow, and welcome to the Human Connection Podcast.
Thank you, Cobb.
So I imagine with your history of working with different sized companies, there's obviously different challenges with sales teams of varying sizes, but what are some of the things that sales managers are often missing when it comes to empowering their teams for success?
Well, you were talking about the human element before, and I think that's a common thread. And a lot of times there are common issues, whether it's a company that's early stage scaling, or a company that's larger and has some infrastructure, or a company that is a large company. The challenges are with the management of the sales process and the salespeople. And oftentimes there is not an official sales playbook, and people are being, they do need to be managed differently to a certain extent and on an individual level. But it's important to have weekly sales meetings, have action plans that each one of the individuals are filling out, that they own, that they're accountable to, and then working with those individuals one-on-one, whether it's doing ride-alongs, could be virtual ride-alongs, in other words, sitting in on client meetings or prospect meetings, helping out with pipeline management, deals that have stalled or getting in the door. And so one of the failures that I've seen is that you got a lot of desk managers out there, people that are just looking at metrics and spreadsheets or whatever it is, and they're not individually working with and cultivating those individuals. In some instances, and I've worked with companies that already have sales managers in place, and then it's not the full sales building and infrastructure, and they may have a sales playbook, but there are going to be gaps in that. There's going to be things that need to be worked on a strategic level, and so then it comes down to coaching those managers and then also working with the reps.
Yeah, I think that's a big problem. A lot of companies get so engrossed in the metrics and they don't realize all the things that influence the metrics that can be improved by that personal touch, or that sitting on a call, or having the managers be more involved and customizing their relationships with each member of their sales team based on what that member needs to succeed, based on their experience or their past performance, that sort of stuff. And I like what you talked about, giving the individual sales team members authority or kind of like they need to own and have the accountability for their tools and the way they do things. So I think there's so much when companies get a sales process in place, which is definitely important. If it seems kind of rigid or forced upon people, and it doesn't come across as like this an authentic relationship or authentic behavior for that person, then it can really disrupt their ability to sell. And so I think I like that you mentioned that there needs to be some of that custom fitting for individual sales team members.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so when you're working with these sales managers, say they already have a team established, what do you do? Like, what's the success story where you came in and like, what are some of the pain points that they were struggling with, and how did you help them solve it?
Yeah, sometimes they can be experienced managers and, they've just kind of gotten away from what even made them successful. And then, like to your point, they're not, crafting a plan that is designed for the individual. And whether it's been in corporate America or consulting, there are, there are managers that aren't working, very effectively with the individuals. And that can particularly be true of the younger generations, because one thing I found when, I ended up with a team that I took over where I think one person was over 30 years old. And then a lot of the managers were struggling with that because, the individuals, they would quickly leave if they didn't like what they're doing. And it wasn't always about compensation. It was more about knowing that there was a plan for them and that they had a future and that you were going to help take them to where they want to go. And so I would take time to understand what was really important to them on an individual, personal and a professional basis, talk through that, make it clear to them, let them know that I'm here to help them get there. And then have them, put together, I'd have a templated action plan, but everyone would put together their action plan. And then it's working through that and then even collaborating on it and having everyone present it to one another and then having them redo it afterwards, kind of a best practice sharing session. That's something that I also always incorporate, whether I'm running a team, in corporate America or was running a team in corporate America or on an engagement, is making sure that you're really focused on that, and even having best practice sharing sessions each week where we would go around the horn and say, okay, either talk about a success you have this week or talk about a issue you're having, kind of a hurdle you're having or a bottleneck in moving forward an account or getting into an account. And then, with the group kind of brain power, they're collaborating. They would learn from the success stories, but then also, people would be able to chime in, whether it's myself or other reps or all of the above, and helping that individual with whatever, hurdle it is that they're dealing with.
I think that's a beautiful solution to that problem of people not feeling supported, because there's so much like the sales teams have the kind of like a competitive who can sell the most kind of like leaderboard type setup, and it can foster more siloing of individuals where they're going to feel like it's just them against the team instead of the team sharing ideas and best practices and giving people input on how they can get better. And then so I really like the idea of having the kind of idea sharing sessions, because especially with how fast things change and what, depending on the industry you're trying to target, if someone gets a sense of or hears about something that's changed or found something that works better, then sharing that and rewarding them for sharing with other people leads to not just more success for the team and the company, but also I think it just builds again that sense of belonging and camaraderie, and it'll help like avoid that problem you said of people leaving really quickly because they don't feel like they're getting what they need beyond just the compensation from the company they work for, which I think is a brilliant solution.
Also there can be different ways to go about that. You've got to have your leaderboards and you've got to track where people are, with their quotas and acknowledge, top performances. But what I would typically do is on a weekly basis, sometimes on a monthly basis, you would, there might be leads or, certain recognition that the top people, one or two people would get for their sales performance. But then we would also have, key performance indicators, KPIs, and people that would hit those numbers. We'd look at what is the activity that the top performers are doing. And then the people that would hit, even if they didn't hit the top, sales numbers, they would be rewarded with leads or otherwise for, hitting those thresholds on their metrics.
Yeah, I think there's I like that you're kind of breaking down the KPIs where here's I guess it's like the leading metric versus the following metrics, where if you're just only tracking how much they close and you're not rewarding people for the behavior that leads to the close, then it can become very frustrating and disheartening because people don't know what they should be doing to improve the following KPIs. But if you reward them for doing the things before the sale that will end up improving the results, then that gives them at least something to do that's they know is moving in the right direction, which I think is a great solution to that, instead of just tracking how much they sell, because and it kind of demystifies a lot of the process especially for newer members that aren't sure exactly how to succeed at the role right away.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I also would implement mentorship programs where the top reps that wanted to participate, they could mentor a new rep. Obviously, I'm working with them, really closely in the first 6 months, and if it's a big company, they're getting formal training. But having them do their first few deals with a mentor, and they're learning from A to Z, and that really helps to shortcut the ramp up period.
Yeah, imagine when there's a classic problem of people that are the top performers doing the work get promoted to be the manager, and they don't really have the manager skills or the people skills to succeed in that role. So you get all these managers that aren't doing what they do best, and everything kind of falls apart. So when you're working with managers, is it often like the top sales leaders that get those like promoted to be the sales manager? What do you recommend people do if say there's a sales manager opening? What is your recommendation? Because I imagine it could be different from depending on the size of the company and who their team is and how long the team's been around. But I imagine that could be something that if the wrong person becomes the sales manager, that can just throw off the entire process.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's I was always a fan of promoting from within, but sometimes you have to look outside, and then that helps to compare and contrast what the level of sales management skill is of someone from the outside, or maybe from another area if it's a larger company, and then the other thing you really have to think about is you're taking your top performer and a lot of revenue off the table when you're putting them up in a management. So they have to be committed, and then they also have to have the management skills. And in some instances that can be coached and they can be brought up to it. But in other instances, and you have to determine this kind of up front and assess it, are they going to just be a desk manager? Are they going to basically expect everyone to do exactly what they have done? And in many instances, they can't.
Yeah, and I think it's because I was just thinking when you mentioned the mentor program, it seemed like that might help prepare people for a sales manager role. But then again, if you take the best sales people and make them managers, they're not selling as much anymore at all, and so there's that issue. And then so it's interesting. It seems like it's more obvious the the potholes or the problems that come when you just kind of promote the best person to be a manager in the sales area, because it's so tied to revenue and metrics are really clear compared to like an internal role that's not client facing. So when and you mentioned that like sometimes you have to look outside when you're looking to bring in someone to be a sales manager role. What are you looking for? Because it seems like if you said that the best salespeople are, you want to keep them in the sales roles because they're bringing in the money. And so, what do you look for in a good sales manager that helps you help find the right people that are going to enable the sales team to be more successful instead of just, like you said, trying to expect everyone to sell the way they do, that sort of thing?
Yeah, you're looking for someone that has had successful sales management experience, and ideally, if they have some connection to the industry or at least understand the industry well, then you're really looking at what are their processes, what are they going to do when they come in, and it's not just looking at their resume because people can fluff that up. It's understanding why they want to come over, and then actually having them be able to articulate a plan, or even put it in writing, even just like a one pager. What are you going to do in your first 90 days? And you should have your own people do it too, because whoever's assessing this hopefully is a good leader. But one of the problems sometimes from hiring from within is that you've got a superstar salesperson. They want to go into management, but not necessarily because they understand that they're doing it for the company or the shareholders, if that's an instance. And most importantly, that their job is to develop and support the individuals that are working for them. And what I've seen through the years in corporate and smaller companies is managers that basically see going to management as a rite of passage, where they can kind of go back into their office or remote, wherever they are, kick back their legs and just be a spreadsheet manager. And that's about the worst thing that can happen.
Yeah, because it's, I think, yeah, that mindset of once you're a manager, you don't have to actually do anything with the people anymore makes no sense, because it's, if you want that spreadsheet to look good, you got to engage with people and make sure they're involved and supported in what, like we talked about before, about what they need to be successful and have that. And so I think it's definitely not an easy decision or not an easy transition to make and have it be successful, because it seems like, especially in sales, the skills that make you good at that, actually it could be more applicable to like leadership roles, because often if you're good sales, you're good at listening, you're good at understanding like what people are need help with. But I guess it is that mindset that if people expect to be able to focus on numbers and on the people involved anymore, then that's going to be a huge problem that can definitely derail the success of the sales team, which will derail the success of the whole company.
Yeah, no, that's true. I've got kind of an example, back when I was in corporate at a larger company. And so took the company, company was already almost 15 years old and doing nearly $1 billion at the time. And it was almost not by accident, but I was one of the top managers, or at that time, the top manager in the company. So they started without me knowing, tracking what I was doing, my activity, and ride-alongs, because we had, we were expected to do a certain amount of ride-alongs. And actually at a sales conference, the CEO I was surprised by it, because the CEO got up and put up my numbers, and then the number of ride-alongs that I did with my reps. And these are all physical ride-alongs going out to actual, clients and prospects. And there was a significant and appreciable difference in the performance of the sales team, and not just the top performers across the board, bringing up the people that maybe were not doing that well or could be doing better. And that then became the standard of, metrics that they, had the other 35 managers in the country do. So I actually had some people that weren't big fans of me after that, those desk managers.
Yeah, well, that's quite a way to call out the sales managers that aren't doing very well, and there must have been some awkward conversations or looks from people in the room that realized that they weren't as good of a manager as they probably thought they were in their head, or that now more people knew that they were dropping the ball in some way. So that's a
Well,
really
they're going to
fun.
have to show up to work and do their job. Is what they're going to
Yeah,
have to do.
yeah. Well, thank you so much for connecting with me today, James. If you enjoyed this episode of the Human Connection Podcast, please like, leave a review, and share it. If you'd like to connect with myself or James, check out the links in the show notes. And remember, no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Happy connecting.
Thank you, Carl.